Hello friends, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of DotaAlchemy.com, and this is going to be the Gameplay Update 7.19c analysis video, and also a bit of first impressions. So we have a change to Blade Mail first and foremost. The cooldown was reduced from 20 to 25, the bonus armor was reduced from 6 to 5. That 6 bonus armor, one of that bonus armor came from nowhere. You put in a Chainmail, which has 5 bonus armor, and then you get 6 when it becomes a Blade Mail. It doesn't really make all that much sense. And then you have this cooldown increase, which of course is just because the return has been really strong since it started returning damage, considering the defenses of the person that is attacking the hero that has the Blade Mail, essentially. So this item has been relatively overpowered for a long time. I think it's been undershadowed. I think it's been undervalued for how overpowered it is. If you pick it up on like a hero like Weaver or Nature's Prophet, it feels really good in terms of the stats that it provides. It makes you really tanky, it makes you do a lot of damage, and then of course you have that Blade Mail return ability, which arguably doesn't even matter considering the stats that you get from it are so ridiculous. So it makes sense to nerf this item. I feel like this is something that would be considered cancer if we let Blade Mail go on as it was in the current meta for a couple of more months. People would consider it to be cancer, so this makes a lot of sense to me. So hero changes, we have Clinkz base strength reduced by 2. This hero has always struggled in the early game before he gets level 6 with being very squishy, so Valve is kind of just amplifying that, making that more of something people can punish, because this hero is incredibly strong since they changed Strafe to dodge projectiles, which is ridiculous. Searing Arrow's mana cost has been increased. This is something that will hurt him as well because he has some mana issues. People build Soul Ring, Aquila, sometimes Bottle, send out a lot of clarities. So this is something that hurts him even more, in something that he was a little bit struggling with before as well. So the talents reduced a little bit, 20 health regen to plus 16. Since this scales with strength, that plus 4 that you're losing is actually pretty significant. And then the strafe duration was reduced from plus 4 strafe duration to plus 3. It was really ridiculous when Clinkz gets 29 and you have a lot of projectiles that he can just dodge basically infinitely with a almost permanent strafe. It was pretty overpowered, so I think this makes a lot of sense to nerf this hero in this way, just a little bit less bullshit. Crystal Maiden Arcane Aura was reduced to allies. I don't think people were abusing this all that much in terms of their drafts, and in terms of in pubs. I think really the Arcane Aura has been incredibly strong because she can spam out her nukes in the laning phase, which have been considered to be overpowered for the past few patches, so I think that Crystal Maiden is still going to be in a relatively good spot with this change. Dark Willow, Bramble's total damage was reduced, most significantly at the later levels, and then a little bit at level 1. It's still a really good level 1 nuke, especially if somebody runs into 2 Brambles, but at max level it is nowhere near as big of a powerhouse as it was. So Shadow Realm cooldown increased by 2 seconds at all levels, it seems, and this is something that it does affect her quite a bit, because the uptime on this was something that was pretty ridiculous. You pick up like a Yule Scepter and a Glimmer Cape, and all of a sudden this hero feels unkillable. So there's an extra 2 seconds where you can actually get on top of her. Cursed Crown. So Cursed Crown stun duration was reduced a little bit. That's not that big of a deal. That's still a very, very long stun, 0.25 seconds. I would say that's not that big of a nerf. Really, these two are a little bit more significant, but when you add all of these things together, of course the hero is going to feel a little bit weaker. Bedlam damage was reduced. This is not that significant. It's 10 for each increasing level that has been reduced, so it still does like 3,000 damage at max level or something like that. It's still really ridiculous. She still has the ridiculous fear. I think this hero is still going to be considered pretty strong because she has been first phased for the last few patches, basically since she's been added into the game, barring the first time they nerfed her really hard. Earthshaker Root now disables his Scepter ability. It was bullshit that it didn't do that in the first place. It's an escape, and for some reason you could just jump around and there's nothing that could stop you. So now if you pick up an Atos, you can actually catch that feisty little Earthshaker, which is good. Enchantress Strength rescaled, so she no longer has good, well, she never had good base strength, but her base strength is basically dog shit now, and she will scale such that her at a certain level, probably level like 10 to 15, I'm not sure on the math of this, but she'll have basically the same strength. So it's just a nerf to the early levels, which we saw a lot in the previous patch. So her move speed was reduced. It's still a lot. They reduced it by 15 last time. So now a hero like Ursa, any counterpick hero like Ursa Gyro is going to be a lot better than her because they can get on top of her in the laning phase. So that's actually a pretty decent nerf. Base intelligence reduced. So this reduces the damage she does in terms of right clicks. And her impetus is going to cost more of her total mana pool when she's level 6. So that's a little bit of a nerf in terms of her damage because of the impetus, because of the and then also because of the base damage that you would lose from losing that intelligence, which her base damage is pretty high. So Grimstroke. I actually think this hero got buffed. So Inkswell no longer makes the target immune to attacks, which a lot of people weren't using that effectively anyway, but then it no longer silences and disarms the target. So if you combo this hero with like a Wraith King or a Weaver, you can just Inkswell them, Wraith King stun them, which he got nerfed too, by the way, we'll cover that later, or run the Weaver on top of somebody with Sakuchi, and then all of a sudden Inkswell is like really overpowered because you can use spells while you're Inkswelled. You can set up for the Inkswell while it's on you, which is kind of insane. And then the Soulbind duration was increased. That's just a straight buff. So I think this hero is really, really good. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that they buffed him because he's arguably like the second best 4 next to Dark Willow, at least in 7.19b. So yeah, interesting. I think this hero's overpowered. Phantom Lancer, agi gain reduced. It's still very high, but I mean, it was absurdly too high before. This hero feels like he's unkillable when he gets a heart. I think any nerfs to him are going to be good. He's probably still going to be pretty damn good anyway. Phoenix, level 15 talent reduced. Slight nerf to Phoenix, not that big of a deal. It's still going to one-hit an entire creep wave. I'm pretty sure maybe they changed it so that that's how it's not going to work when it gets level 15, at least as a support. I'm not sure on the math on that. If they did that, that kind of sucks. But I feel like with plus 50, you're killing the waves very easily anyway. So plus 40, I don't see that not killing waves. Silencer, last word damage has been rescaled. So it's no longer as threatening at level 1. It's still really good. There's not many level 1 abilities that do this much damage, but 150 was just ridiculous. It was a great 1-point wonder. Arcane Curse, mana cost has been increased again. This is a harassing ability in the laning phase, so it's yeah, definitely necessary because this hero is still getting picked in every single game. Global Silence mana cost increased. That's not that big of a deal. Maybe people will favor going more stat items, maybe a couple of null talismans or something like that, because this hero really does pick up Tranquil Boots and you don't really have to care about mana. So now with all these mana cost increased, maybe you do. Spectre, oh, thank God for this. Desolate damage has been increased from 375 to 500, or sorry, the radius has been increased. So now if people are standing like relatively close to each other, they will not take Desolate damage. So this is nice because this is close enough that you won't take Desolate damage, but far enough that you're not going to get like team wiped because you're standing close to people. So this is definitely nice. So if you're just grouped up a little bit in team fights, you're not going to take Desolate damage anymore. Dispersion, it is no longer amazing at level 1. That is excellent because this ability, it feels like in the laning stage you pick up 1 level in Dispersion and she just gets a little bit of an extra Stout Shield. On top of the Stout Shield buffs that were just added in the previous patch, it really felt like even though she got nerfed in the previous patch, she was still very, very good because of that. Haunt mana cost increased. She struggles with mana issues in the game, like regardless of this increase, so I think that this is a good nerf to her. 250 mana cost is actually pretty goddamn significant. That's like half of her mana, so I think this is a big nerf to her, and you're gonna have to manage your mana a lot better, buy a lot more clarities on this hero. Level 10 talent, Desolate damage is no longer there. Good, that was way too good for level 10. It literally gave you more than 1 point in Desolate would give you, and that's for all stats. So replacing the 15 talent with the level 10 talent, and then the level 15 talent becomes the Desolate damage, which you probably would still go pick that up. I'm not 100%. I think the other one is the Spectral Dagger cooldown reduction, which people are going. Let's see. Yeah. So that's a pretty tough choice. I would say you definitely go the health regen now at level 10, but this is such a necessary nerf to her because she's one of these heroes where it was kind of obvious what her talents were at every point, and every single level of talents was just broken. So now it's kind of level 15, you have to choose between 2 really, really good talents. So in the level 25, 8% dispersion to 6%. Doesn't look like a lot, but because of how the damage reduction works on dispersion, there's actually a decent amount. I mean, it's also returned as like pure damage, well, whatever the damage type is, so it's pretty big nerf. Storm Static Remnant was nerfed in terms of the damage it does. It did a lot at level 1. I think people are maxing it anyway, but even if you max it now, it does 20 less damage. That kind of sucks because I do feel like this hero is only good because he's a counter to Spectre and a counter to a couple of the really OP heroes in the game, but he doesn't feel all that great other than that. So this is kind of unfortunate in my opinion, but I think that's a pretty big nerf to him because he uses this to farm. This slows down his farming speed and the time it takes him to come online now. So Ursa, Fury Swipes, damage per attack reduced. Thank God it did way too much at level 1 anyway, so now maybe you could go for 2 points in this and 2 points in Earthshock to get that kind of 100 damage, which by the way, Earthshock damage was reduced. It did way too much for a 75 mana cost anyway, so I think this is a much needed nerf to this hero. So now you have to level it up a little bit, maybe level to level 2. People were leveling this anyway, but at level 1, it's no longer really something you can use to scare people as much and do damage and get last hits and stuff like that. And that's something you would do at level 2. So level 2 in this ability. In Rage, damage multiplier was reduced a little bit. I still think this hero is going to be pretty good because he's been pretty broken. First phaseable for sure, depending on the team, depending on the player. And these nerfs are all small number nerfs, so it's not that huge of a deal. Vengeful Spirit, movement speed reduced, projectile speed reduced significantly. So this is now a way easier to dodge ability. That is actually quite a big nerf to Vengeful Spirit, especially if you have some hero like a Puck or some Manta hero that can just dodge this stun. That is also, so if you're trying to like cancel somebody's TP, you run in and you throw the stun, you might actually not get it off because it's going to be so slow and traveling to them. I'd like to see how that looks, actually. It might be interesting. And then movement speed reduced as well. So this hero never had super high movement speed. It's an agi hero, so it's not that big of a deal. So you get a lot of increased movement speed from agility, but that's still rough because she would rotate around lanes and she would go for kills and try to position. Like, positioning really matters on this hero, so 5 movement speed is definitely significant. Weaver, base intelligence reduced, which means he has a lot less mana to work with at level 1, which is kind of good because this hero has so many Sakuchis he can do at level 1 anyway. The Swarm cooldown increased. You max this anyway after Sakuchi. I don't think this is that huge of a deal. Time-lapse, the cooldown has been increased. I don't think this is that huge of a deal either. You weren't really using time-lapse every 60 seconds anyway. Talents, mana break talent has been changed to the strength, and then the strength talent has been changed to the mana break. So that's a straight nerf because you're losing 5 strength. You would go for both of these talents a lot of the time. So this hero is going to be strictly less tanky. Wraith King, oh god. This is a pretty huge nerf. So the stun duration has been rescaled so that it's basically terrible at level 1, and then it scales up to be as good as it was. The only real buff to this is that it does 100 damage plus 10 plus 10, so 120 damage at level 1 instantly. So it actually does a lot of burst now, but it only stuns for 1.1 seconds. And then the DPS has been rescaled as well, so it does a little bit more at max level. So this ability is actually better at max level in terms of the DPS, obviously not in terms of the damage. It's a pretty goddamn huge nerf. And then Vampiric Aura is now a melee only ability, like the old Vlads. Good god, this hero has been hit hard. I think this hero is going to be not picked as anywhere near as much as it was in the previous patch. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Maybe the fact that it does so much base damage now on the stun will make me eat my words, but I really feel like this hero is kind of dog shit with these nerfs. This is a lot. So Zeus, I should say, strength gain it's been reduced by 0.2. So he's a lot less tanky, which, I mean, he already wasn't tanky at all. I don't think this is that huge of a deal. It makes it a lot easier to blow this guy up if you actually get on top of him. Maybe people will prefer going for an Eon Disc a lot more, which people were already going for, but now that he's so squishy, definitely a play to be made in the game. So 25 talent reduced from 170 arc lightning damage to 155. This isn't really why he's so overpowered, so I don't think that's huge of a deal. That huge of a deal, I should say. It's level 25 talent, so you don't really get it that often in games. However, this was a really, really excellent talent. I still think it's going to be really good, and I still think that you're going to be able to 2-shot creep waves with the arc lightning. So I still think this is a really, really good hero and excellent in this patch. So anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys in another video.